positional tiers, shooting guards. Can't put the word shooting in the title because, stuff happens, but that's what we're talking about. And Michael Bolton is absolutely, pun intended, fired up.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and after this I'm going for a bit of a rub because I am an old campaigner. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and get $20 off your first purchase using the code LOCKEDONNBA. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. Thumbs, bangs, comments, bang, bang, bang. We are here talking tiers. Yesterday we did point guards. Today we are doing shooting guards. Remember, I gave a bit of a spiel at the start of yesterday's show talking about what tiers are and what they aren't, some of the methodology behind it, the positional requirements behind it. So I'm not going to go into all of that there. It is just worth remembering, if a guy that is in tier 4, that doesn't mean you have to draft him ahead of the guys in tier 5, for example. Because it's all about balancing ADP and value. It's about, but that guy sits there he might be actually this good, but maybe I can get him much later on. And then I end up with 2 or 3 players in tier 4. So the tier is not like I must take this guy ahead of the guys in the other tier. That's how you should value them. That's how I view them at the moment, and things will change. Projections will change. But that is not about looking at it make sure all tier 3 players are off the board before I pick someone from tier 4. Because as you'll see through all of this, there are players with ADPs that are 50 spots different to where I think they should be properly valued. So you don't need to jump that far. It's about reading your draft room, and also, remember, there's no such thing as I have to get this guy. The value is amazing, so let's go earlier, then you take the value away. It's more just to show there are groups of players who have similar sort of value, and then it's about balancing skill sets and then choosing from there. So I hope that is, I think it's relatively clear. We're talking shooting guards. Again, the positional requirements come from Yahoo's default positions. That's what we're going to use, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So there's going to be some overlap, so there's going to be a bunch of guys that I don't talk about a huge amount in this one, as that just disappears. There it is. Because tier 1 is, it's Luka Doncic again. He is listed point guard, shooting guard. He is the tier 1 player. We discussed at length yesterday about the 2-game playoff week and how there are ways around that. If that is your first week of playoffs, I think it's okay. If it's your championship week, I'd be a bit loath to pick him at number 3. In a points league, the gap is probably large enough that you do take him anyway. But that 2-game week is very, very difficult to overcome in the second round or in the finals of your playoffs. Imagine the guy you're going up against has Nikola Jokic or Victor Wembanyama playing 3 or 4 games. And while 3 versus 2 is not that different, it's 50% different. So it is different. It's a big difference. So just be aware of that. But he does sit, Luka, very clearly, I believe, there in tier 3 ahead of the other guys. Now, when we did the point guard tiers yesterday, it was an interesting situation because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was in the point guard tiers, but for whatever reason, and I can't explain the reason, for whatever reason, Shai only has point guard eligibility. The man that played as the Thunder's shooting guard all of last season has no shooting guard eligibility this season. I'm sure he will. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know that Shai will get shooting guard eligibility this season. The position eligibilities, I don't mind them being broad with some of the positional stuff, but for example, when we look at the tier 2 players, LaMelo Ball and Tyrese Halliburton as tier 2 shooting guards, I'm pretty certain these men have never played a single second at shooting guard. Ever. Yet they're listed as point guard shooting guards. And the man who played all of last season as the team's shooting guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is not listed as one. Now this season he will be their point guard. But he wasn't. So I don't get that at all. That is a tick against Shai. for in terms of drafting because you don't have that flexibility that they just seem to give out to anybody. We had Gary Trent and Jalen Green listed as point guards. All right. Shea couldn't get a shooting guard eligibility. Josh Giddey, whom people commented yesterday, hey, where's Josh Giddey in the point guard tiers? Well, he is not listed as a point guard on Yahoo. Again, he will get point guard eligibility because, again, he has been a point guard for 3 consecutive years, and he will be the Bulls starting point guard this season. So I'm guessing he gets it, but I don't know. He didn't get it last year. So that is part of that. Anyway, tier 2. We talked about these guys yesterday, Tyrese Halliburton, LaMelo Ball. This is one of those examples. Like LaMelo's ADP is 41 on ESPN. It's 28 over on Yahoo. I am very much interested or very excited to see what LaMelo does. I am not heading into the season expecting him to play 30 games. I think that is a crazy way to look at things. I don't know how much he's going to play, obviously. But you don't need to take him in the same range that you take Tyrese Halliburton. You can grab him in round 2, and obviously on ESPN, apparently some of the time you can get him in round 3 or 4. And that is where you really start to accumulate fantasy value, is by doing things like that. LaMelo's numbers were great. Again, not sure why he's a shooting guard eligible player, but he is. So you take advantage of that very, very clear oversight, I think, in terms of how the positions are determined. Because there is just so much crossover between the point guard tiers and the shooting guard tiers. Tier 3 contains another player that we just talked about yesterday in the point guards, and that is Steph Curry. I worry about the excess load giggity on Steph Curry's body, the extra usage he's going to take on, but it should lead us to better numbers than what he had last season, where last season Steph was not a first round player, and yeah, that's just what happens as you get older. So while I do have him in tier 3, I am a little cautious of taking Steph in this spot, but the numbers that I project for him say that this is the right spot. I am just quite a bit cautious about where Steph goes from there. Now we head into tier 4, which is where we're going to have a few more shooting guard type players. Because most of these other guys have all been, they've all been point guard eligible guys. But tier 4 has a bunch of different players here. So let's go through who I've got in tier 4. Devin Booker is point guard eligible. He is in this tier. If you wanted to put Devin Booker into that same tier as a Steph Curry, I get it. That is okay. His ADP is middle of second round. I think he's relatively safe there. The one who is the addition here, because there's 2 guys who were additions in this list, but we talked about Booker yesterday. We've got James Harden here, whose ESPN ADP is 46. Insane. Literally insane. Craziness. And Donovan Mitchell, whose ESPN ADP is 20 and Yahoo's 17. We talked about those guys yesterday. And part of the reason why someone questioned why would you have Booker below like a Fred VanVleet yesterday? Well, the reason is I think VanVleet's going to play 1 million minutes again. And I think both Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell are going to see their minutes cut by 2 to 3 minutes a game, given the coaches and the way the team is structured. And that's part of why I have that. But like I said, the guy that is coming into this group with Booker, Harden, Don Mitchell into tier 4, we're talking Goose, Anthony Edwards, because obviously he is the starting shooting guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves. His ADP is very high. It's number 11 on Yahoo. It's number 9 on ESPN. He averaged 26 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. His field goal is a little bit below average. His steals are pretty good. His threes are pretty good. I took him on the turn, first, second round turn in a Roto mock draft the other day. I think that we are overvaluing Anthony a little bit in some spots, like having him the way that he sits at the moment as a easy first round player, top 10 first round player, doesn't sit right with me. But given the question marks around a lot of guys at the end of the first round, like I would have Anthony Edwards over Kevin Durant, to be honest. Him and Steph is a debatable one. But then what do you want to do with like getting Embiid where significant health concerns? Like that's the problem. Now, Edwards has never been anywhere near this level of production. So you're always going to have a level of skepticism about what does he do to improve that? Does he become a 29 point per game scorer? Because if he does, then he is a first round player. Does he hit 3 threes a game? Does he get to 6 assists? Maybe, maybe not. Does the efficiency improve? Maybe, maybe not. The easy thing for him is more free throw attempts and going from 83.6 to 87% from the line. He does that, and then he does become a first-round player. So I'm actually less was bothered by him being a second-round player last year. I'm less bothered by him being a fringe cusp first-round guy this year than I was with him as a second-round player last year. Because, of course, he did not live up to that last season. We're all well aware of that. The other guy that I've got in Tier 4 is Paul George, who you can get much later. Yahoo ADP of 30, ESPN 43. George is still really good. People hate Paul George. I get it. I know that. I had a discussion with somebody about him the other day, and they said, man, I can't draft Paul George. He's just always hurt. Is he? Oh, he sits games all the time. Does he? Like, not really. He's missed some games, sure. But not really. He's had some weird injuries that we hold him to a different standard that we hold other players to. And I always want to try and break narratives like that. Like, Paul George has missed time. So has everybody. And he gets, dinged continually. And him and Harden sitting there. Again, people hate their guys. They hate these two players. They hate the Clippers. They hate these players. Therefore, they're being drafted in the middle of, on ESPN, 43 and 46 on ADPs is the middle of round 5. Which, if you're in a fantasy league and you are picking between Paul George and James Harden in the middle of round 5, what is going on? That is not right. In fact, if that's how your league is headed, well, maybe we need to talk about today's sponsor, because today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you have the curiosity that you did when you were a child? The curiosity to ask the question, why on earth would we be drafting Paul George in round 5? As a kid, you'd ask that question and go, Josh, isn't he a top 30 player easily? I'd say, yeah. And I go, but why is he going in round 5? And I'd say, I don't know. But as an adult, your curiosity just leaves you. You just accept things. Therapy can be a way of rediscovering the questioning nature, the curiosity, learning, growing, doing new things. Therapy can be a part of that journey to help rediscover that, I don't want to say inner child, because they've told me here it's the back to school era as you start to learn new things. So you've been thinking about starting therapy to help give you that spark. Give BetterHelp a try. It's online entirely. It's convenient by design. And it's so easy. You just fill out an online questionnaire, of course, because it is all online. They match you with a therapist and off you go. Bob's your uncle. But maybe Bob's not your uncle. And then that therapist doesn't match with you. Well, you can just change to a new one free of charge at any point, because getting that connection is the way that you get the results. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Ask the question to your BetterHelp therapist. Why is Paul George going in round 5? Why do people hate the man? That's fine. Ask it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. It is BetterHelp. HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so that's 4 tiers done out of the way. Let's go on to tier 5 of shooting guards. That would be, again, we love the way numbers work here. We're big fans of numbers. Let's talk about tier 5. There are two names that we talked about yesterday, Kyrie Irving and DeJounte Murray. Kyrie has still got that 2-game issue that Luka has. DeJounte Murray, it's a little all over the place to me as to where it sits. The value of his increase in assists is sort of offsetting some of my concerns regarding usage, and I think he's going to play a lot in New Orleans, but I don't know. This is where Scotty Barnes fits for me. His ADP is 20 with an ADP on 21 at ESPN. Pretty good numbers, right? There are people who will take Scotty Barnes at the end of round 1. I cannot get behind that. We don't really know the full dynamic between Barnes, Barrett, Quickly. Now, it's very, very... let me get this clear before the absolutely, totally brilliant, unbelievably nice people in Toronto get on me. I love all you guys, and you are always 100% normal and sane. Let's just put that out there now. You're always very, very straightforward, and everyone should want to go and live in Canada. Scotty Barnes is the franchise player for Toronto. He is the best player on this team without any question. He had a huge breakout season last year and looked great. When I say I'm not really sure of the hierarchical pecking order between Barrett, Quickly, Barnes, is because they barely played together. And in the minutes they did play together, Barnes had the lowest usage of that trio. Remembering what usage is. Shot attempts, free throw attempts, turnovers. He also had the same assist numbers as what Emmanuel Quickly did. He also shot only 32% from 3 over the second half. I think it was 31% from 3 over the second half of the season. He also doubled his block rate last season, which I'm not sure that holds. It probably does, but I'm not sure that it does. I'm just not willing to look at what Barnes did last season and go, well, they moved these other guys, so it's now his team and he's got to do this stuff, so he's going to get even better than he was last season. I'm not ready to fully sit on that. And remember, I am lower on Barnes than a lot of people, so always price that in with what I'm saying. I just don't know that Barnes has 2 more levels of usage to go. I don't know that he is the number 1 usage guy at all times between Barrett, Quickly, and him. And I'm not sure that the shooting stays at the season-long level that it was. I think this is about the right spot for him. Around the end of round 2 is a decent area. And, push come to shove, I'd probably take him ahead of Kyrie and DeJounte. But the way that the valuations look to me is he sits in this area. We good? Shout out to... I had poutine the other night, actually. Father's Day dinner. Wasn't as good. This is... the Canada stuff is all a joke. This is serious. The poutine that I had, nowhere near as good as the poutine that I had in Montreal. Of course it wasn't. It was in Melbourne. Poutine in Montreal, one of the best things I've ever eaten. Fantastic. There you go. Clip that out and jerk off to it. Let's talk about Tier 6. Who is in Tier 6 for me here? Because, this is actually, this is where we start to get real interesting, I think, with some of these guys in this group. We've got Cade Cunningham, who was in the point guard list as well. We've got Tyrese Maxey, who was in the point guard list, who, again, there are two sides of the discussion to get into on Maxey. You can say, well, he was awesome. He made an all-star team last year. He's got the big contract now. Again, reverse contract year scenario, some people suggest is going to happen, which, again, is because contract years don't exist. It's not a real thing, so you can actually improve at any point, and you can find examples to show anything. Maxey, I just think with Paul George arriving, George, higher usage player than Tobias Harris. George, higher assist player than Tobias Harris. Expectation, Embiid plays more than 39 games. Therefore, I don't see how Maxey steps up from last season. In fact, it might even be hard to hold what he did last season. So I think he's in this area. But maybe he just completely goes crazy. Paul George plays a Bradley Beal role, and Maxey is a 1B and a 1A on night when Embiid is out. Maybe. I don't see that, but that's maybe. And Emmanuel Quickley's in this tier as well, who is one of those guys that we talked about at the start of the show where his ADP is 90 on ESPN. Like, come on. His ADP is 56 on Yahoo. Why did I say it that way? I don't know. Maybe I'm melting down. Who knows? But it's Yahoo, not Yahoo. So you don't have to take Quickley in the same range as these guys who would go in round 3. You can take Quickley in round 4, maybe round 5, and get some good value on it. The 2 guys who enter this tier, who aren't point guards, Kawhi Leonard, who is I believe, first round per game player. His ADP is 35 on Yahoo and 39 on ESPN, but I am very, very confident that Kawhi will not play back-to-backs this season or will not play all back-to-backs. Multiple meniscus injuries on the same knee is the same reason that I am out on Embiid this year. Is I do not like that repeat ligament, well, meniscus not a ligament, but soft tissue connective issue in the same knee. That clearly meant that he couldn't last the whole season. Therefore, they will want him to be healthier towards the end and he will miss games early on. Another victim of the 65-game rule. So that is why I have Kawhi in this list, because I cannot sit here and tell you that I have any level of confidence of him playing 65. No way. The other one who's in this group is the Bronco Jalen Williams, who's got an ADP of 43. On ESPN, he sits at 53 with an ADP. He is 23. He's 6'5", has been playing a lot of power forward. I think he'll play a little bit less power forward this season. Not that he's a big rebounder anyway, only 4 rebounds per game last year, but he had 19 points and 4.5 assists. And I think both of those numbers will jump up. I think he could hit almost 5.5 assists. I think he can get to 22, 23 points. Because with Josh Giddey going, he will take on more usage, Jalen Williams, and he will take on more ball handling responsibility. And to me, these ADPs are going to come in dramatically. He will end up in the 30s. Which is about right. If he starts going in the 20s, I think that probably pushes it too high, but he will start to go in the 30s really, really soon. The worry I have is a little bit more usage and more three-point attempts might drop that elite field goal down. He's at 54% field goal last season, Jalen Williams, and he shot 40+% from 3. Now, if he starts taking more than 4 a game, which he needs to, he should be taking 7+ a game. He needs to be taking 7+. If he's actually legit this good of a shooter, which he isn't, but if he is going to be that good of a shooter, he needs to take 7+. And that will drop that percentage down. But I think it offsets with some of the other stuff that'll improve. Even his minutes will improve. He only played 31 minutes a night last season. That should go to 33, I would guess. But Daigneault does keep some of the minutes down. His steals have obviously been quite variable through his career as well. So that is part of a, we don't know what to expect. Do we get 1.8? Do we get 1? Because we got 1.1 only last season, but that could easily jump back up. But he sits there in tier 6, Jalen Williams. Let's go on to tier 7 now with shooting guards. Now, shooting guards, I don't know why. Also, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not a shooting guard. Jalen Williams is a shooting guard. One guy played shooting guard all last season. The other one played power forward all last season. So, whatever. I guess that makes sense to somebody somewhere. Shooting guard is a position, just if you don't include the point guard-ish type players, that is very, very heavily concentrated towards the end of drafts. Because shooting guards in the NBA, if you're good at shooting guard, you play point guard usually, or you play up and play small forward. These strict shooting guard guys generally aren't the best players in the NBA. Let's talk tier 7. 2 players here, very, very different players, but I think the value is quite similar, and you do not need to take them anywhere near the same spot. Tier 7 consists of Desmond Bane, who's got an ADP of 39 on Yahoo and 41 on ESPN, and Jordan Poole, who's in the 90s. Now, Jordan Poole was a top 50 player at the end of last season. Desmond Bane is going to have to deal with the fact that Ja Morant is back and playing a whole season, theoretically, that Marcus Smart is also playing, that Jaren Jackson will be doing a little bit less offensively, meaning Bane probably does a little bit less. Just things are a little bit different. Now, Bane will play more games than he did last season, but I don't think that we should be looking at him as a round 2 or round 3 player. He's in a round 4, round 5 zone, which is where I think the value of Jordan Poole can get to. But I would not take Jordan Poole in round 4. Not remotely close to that. I don't need to. Poole showed last season when Jones was out, him as a point guard and the team having faith in him, for what reason, I don't know, but they do. That was his best spot. Now, Brogdon is there. Bub Carrington is there. Every time I say Bub Carrington, always the automatic captions think I'm saying Barb. Robert Carrington. No, maybe we'll just call him Robert from now on. Anyway, Bub Carrington. They're there too, but from everything I understand is that Jordan Poole is going to be tasked with the point guard role. Grab him in round 7. Grab him in round 8. And I think that we will be maybe surprised. I hope. Something. Maybe. Let's hope so. We've got the rest of the tiers to go through. But first of all, I'm going to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, because after you've listened to a unbelievably satisfying shooting guard tiers video, you might be interested in going to a local sporting event to cheer on the team. And a way to do that is with Game Time. Game Time is always rolling out the new features. Game Time Picks is the newest one. It cuts out all of the fluff. Instead of checking through every ticket that's available and trying to find which one's the best, Game Time algorithmically sorts through those tickets and just presents you with the best ones at the top of the list and go, hey, don't worry about these other ones, big fella. We have got the cream of the crop here. So whether that's going to a baseball game, whether it's going to a musical event, comedy, theater, football, basketball, all that stuff is kicking back off, and you can check all of that out on Game Time with Game Time Picks. Of course, the views from your seat are already there. The flash deals are there. Super deals, curated deals. Man, what doesn't this site do? The only thing they don't do is they don't organize a car for you to get to the game. Although, maybe that's coming next. Game Time Fleet. There you go. Free idea for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Why do I feel like that phrase, what time is it, game time? It's from something. Obviously, it's a relatively common... I feel like it's something, what time is it? Game time! What time is it? Game time! I'm a little hyper. The coffee has kicked in. What's it from? Is it just like such a generic phrase that it's not from anything? That's possible as well. Okay, let's talk about Tier 8 of shooting guards now. We just finished with Tier 7 with Desmond Bane and Geordie the swim-up Poole. Baddies legend. Let's go to Tier 8 where we've got some real shooting guards here in this group. The positional requirements, the positional eligibility things become, not comical is the wrong word, but we understand the limitations behind this sort of stuff when you've got 2 players from the same team at the same position in the same tier in Derek White and Jaylen Brown. Now, Derek White is the team's point guard, I would say. I'd say he's more the point guard than Drew Holiday is. But Jaylen Brown is almost exclusively the 3 on this team. But that's fine. He's shooting guard eligible. You will see that decently wide range of ADPs here. Jaylen Brown going at 35 on ESPN. Incredibly high. Way too high. I think the Celtics, while they might get usage bumps early in the season, this goes for Maximum Derek as well, they'll be very good again. And after a long run through the playoffs and the Olympics, not for you, Jaylen, sorry, they will be resting unbelievably again. The kings of load management up in the Northeast, they will be doing it again this season. Almost certainly, unless something goes dreadfully wrong. They will be doing it again. So I'm just not taking Jaylen Brown in round 3. 4 or 5, totally fine. And he's in this tier 8, along with Jamal Murray, where there's a lot of question marks, and Derek White. And the other name that's in this list is someone that you know that I am a known hater of. It is Cam Thomas. And why am I a known hater of Cam Thomas? Is that I do not believe that he contributes to good basketball, winning basketball, and people will say this is a bad take, right? But people will often say this when I say this very, very clearly. I, Josh Lloyd, personally do not like watching Cam Thomas. You can't argue with that because I just don't like watching him. I know that he scores really well. I know that he put up 22.5 points a game last season and did improve some of his assist numbers. He is going to do more this year. It's hard to do more when you're already at 31 usage, but he might hit 34, 35. He might play 34 minutes, which is enough for me for him to push into scoring 25 a game, maybe get 4 assists, maybe. I don't think he's ever going to get defensive stats or rebounds, but I think this is the right spot. But you don't have to draft Cam Thomas here. His ADP is 82 on Yahoo and 90 on ESPN. You don't have to draft him anywhere near the range of these guys, but that overall value is pretty strong for Cam. Pretty strong. Again, hate watching him play. The one thing I think has a chance to push Cam Thomas even higher than this, if Ben Simmons actually plays, he will be awesome for Thomas. Simmons is one of the best passers in terms of hitting guys who are open for threes. Thomas is not a high-profile three-point shooter, but he's got the size to play next to Thomas, to handle defensive assignments, to enable Cam to loaf on that end and focus all of his energy on shooting. If there's one thing we know Ben Simmons does, well, there's 2 things. Well, there's 3 things. There's 4 things we know that he does. Get injured, like to pass, and never shoot. And Cam Thomas will take all of those shots. That is the perfect combination. So if Simmons is healthy and starting, I actually think it boosts Cam Thomas quite a bit up. But, do we want to trust that? No, of course not. Let's talk tier 9. In these shooting guard options, in tier 9, we've got a little bit of a chunkier tier, quite a few guys, 10 guys sitting in this tier. And again, this is what tends to happen the further down a draft board we get. It's part of the reason that I'm going to talk about this. Maybe I'll do a whole show on this about where I think you absolutely need to do 3rd round reversal. Now, it is not an option on Yahoo or ESPN. There is a way, if you run a private league on Yahoo, to go in there and adjust manually the draft rounds. You can do that. It's a bit frustrating, but there is a way to do it. There's just no easy way to do it. But 3rd round reversal is something we ran in all of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl leagues last year, and we will do it again. In fact, I might even push it a little bit further, but it has to be done. I don't even know why I got to talk about this. Oh yeah, because if you use this from a fantasy points perspective, which is just an easier way of looking at things, the difference between the number 1 ranked player and number 12 ranked player, as we just go tangenty, we'll just tangent a little bit here. What between 1 and 12 is like 15 points a game. 60 fantasy points, number 12 is around 45. Yep. Big difference. In nearly every other round, so 13 to 24, 25 to 36, 37 to 48, as we go on, the difference between the guy that finished 37th and 48th is about 3 fantasy points. The guy that finished 49th versus the guy that finished 60th, it's about 2 fantasy points. It varies between 1 to 3 points, each sort of 12-man grouping. As you go down the draft and as you get down to the hundreds and tens, it's like 1, 2 points. So when we talk 3rd round reversal, even if you do 3rd round reversal, the expected value of those picks still favors the guy picking at number 1 and the guy picking at number 2, because there's a 12 to 15 point gap between pick 1 and pick 12, and every other round it's 3. So you can't make that up. So even taking like the top pick in round 2, the top pick in round 3, you maybe gain 6 to 7 overall extra fantasy points, whereas the guy picking at 1 gains 15. So, yeah, that's part of how that all works. But then we head into this sort of area here where the tiers just become larger. So let's go through some of the names. Bradley Beal is here. Beal at 104 is insane. Like, that is an easy draft situation. Mikal Bridges, big difference. I've got Mikal Bridges and Bradley Beal in the same tier. Bridges is going at 52 on ESPN, Mikal, and 54 on Yahoo, which to me just doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. I cannot get behind that as a draft spot. He probably plays every game. Maybe. But also, like I have continued to say, the man is not Logan. He's not Wolverine. He's not indestructible. He will get hurt. Knock on wood. I don't want him to, but he will get hurt. This is just how life works. He will get hurt. And he will miss a game. And now he enters a team where, Thibodeau will play him a lot of minutes, but Randall and Brunson and OG, like, these guys are going to take their shots. So, like, I'm not expecting Phoenix Mikal back. Alex Caruso is also in this group. You never take him here. He's at ESPN ADP suggests, remember, default ESPN leagues, 13-man rosters, 10 teams, meaning 130 players get rostered. His ADP is 131. So on average, he is not drafted. Now, I know a lot of ESPN leagues are points leagues, and Caruso probably is not a draftable points league guy. That's fair. But this is where you can exploit it for a category league because he's way better than that. He's going to play his 27 to 29 minutes, probably not as much as he did in Chicago, but I like him here for different reasons than the other players. Obviously, Bradley Beal and Alex Caruso, same tier, very, very different players. And the same goes with Josh Giddey, who is somehow not point guard eligible. I think he's still got the triple eligibility, which is great. Shooting guard, small forward, power forward, which once he gets point guard given to him this season, and Yahoo, if you are listening, you probably are, just do it. What are we waiting for? The man has played point guard his entire career. So when Giddey gets that full position eligibility, and I don't want to hear that Josh Giddey's never been a top 100 player, because if you believe that statement, if you live by that statement, you live by the statement that Giannis is a fourth round player. That's how you view that. You live by the fact that 2 years ago, Robert Williams was a better player than Luka Doncic. You live by the fact that Dylan Wright was 50 spots better than Giannis. If you believe that Josh Giddey's not a top 100 player. You live by the fact that Paolo Banchero is not a draftable guy in category leagues. So, if you believe that Josh Giddey hasn't been a top 100 player in the past, you also believe those other things. Yes? Cool. Giddey is going to have some problems, but he shot 80% from the line last year. This is the return from the Caruso deal. He is going to play. Now, their backcourt's still really weird. It's him, it's White, it's Dosunmu, it's Levine. All these guys are there. I don't know what they're going to do to resolve it. But Giddey is in this zone. Points, rebounds, assists, bang, bang, bang. Not a good three-point shooter. He'll hit some. His free throws have been better. He's never going to be a defensive stats guy, but I think he's going to play a lot more, and I think this is the perfect spot for Josh. And then that brings us to his teammate, a guy that maybe is being slept on a little bit, the skater boy, Zach LaVine. LaVine was terrible last season. He barely played. Played 77 games the year before, I think. I don't know how do we trust his injury. Like, obviously, he was disgruntled. This team is the worst managed team in the NBA, outside of Detroit, maybe Charlotte. Although I'll give Charlotte a benefit of the doubt at the moment, new people in. I don't know if LaVine's going to be traded. I don't know if that's better or worse for him. It's probably better because he won't be as disgruntled. But I think we've gone a little bit too far on the hate for how good Zach LaVine actually can be. I think. Maybe not. Tier 10, as we get towards the end of the shooting guards. Actually, no, we're still in tier 9. That is my bad, because I told you it was a big tier, then I only told you the top 5. So let's go through the other 5 players who do sit into tier 9. Brandon Miller is listed as a shooting guard. I don't think he'll play a ton of shooting guard, but he'll play some of it there. Colin Sexton, Anthony Simons, we talked about them yesterday in the point guard tiers. Jalen Suggs. And then a new entry into this list is Devin Vassell, who I do think could be a 20-point per game scorer, who will be, I think, very clearly the number 2 offensive option behind Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio. I think Chris Paul will make his life a little bit easier as well, even if it's just to the 1.5 percentage points and an extra 1 or 2 points per game. I think that will help Vassell. I'm not sure he's ever getting back to being the high steals guy that he was early career, but I think he's a really, really good second banana. And this is the right spot for him. It's the right spot for Brett. I think it's the right spot for all these guys, clearly, because I put them here. The risky players there, I think, are Simons and Sexton because of the teams they're on and maybe trade risk. Suggs, not really risky in terms of playing time. In fact, I think he's got pretty big scope to improve from where he was last season. And then Vassell and Miller, I just feel rock solid. If I was going to pick any one of these 5 guys, not including the first 5 we talked about in tier 9, but any of these 5 players to push 2 tiers up, it is probably Miller. Although his lack of defensive stats, his lack of assists, his up and down efficiency, even though it was a rookie, I need to see how that looks in a team that is more functional than what we got last year from them. Now, after the false start of before, let's talk about tier 10. And the players that we need to get into here. Is this a big tier? I think this is just a 6-man tier. We're talking some of these guys point guard eligible, but some shooting guard guys here. Bogdanovic, Keyonte George. I think Bogdanovic comes off the bench, but still can get 230 minutes or so. He's going to be a good scorer. He'll get his steal numbers were through the roof last year. Not sure that holds, but he'll get his assists. He'll hit threes, and he hit them at an amazing rate as well. Keyonte George, we talked about him at length yesterday. Tyler Herro and Drew Holiday were in a similar spot yesterday as well. I'm not really sure there's any upside for Drew. Herro sort of is what he is. I don't really see where the improvements come from him. CJ McCollum is in this list as well. I am very, very scared about McCollum's role. And his ADP at 67 being the highest of this group is absolute insanity to me. Look, he could easily just come off the bench for the Pelicans. One thing's for sure, he's not going to handle the ball as much. You add DeJounte Murray in without taking anyone away, usage-wise, McCollum has to lose out. And the other one here is Austin Reeves, who was also on yesterday's show, because for some reason he's got point guard eligibility. To be fair, he did play some point guard. But he's in this zone as well. These are just all relatively solid players, I think with relatively limited upside as well, though. Like they sit here without being able to rocket up the board necessarily. Tier 11 is a chunky one. Quite a few players here. I think we've got 11 players in this tier. We go through to Dyson Daniels, who I believe will start over Bogdanovic. He's just the guy you don't need to take in your starting group, but we'll see where it goes. I've got Dante DiVincenzo here, even though, again, if you look at those straight 9-cat rankings, it will tell you he was top 50. Again, no, like he wasn't. You would have to suggest that him and Giannis are about the same value to believe that. I won't believe that. He's not going to play as many minutes. He's not going to have the same role. In fact, I'm certain he won't start. But around this area, he'll get enough playing time, especially with guys in and out of lineups at times. I wonder how different people would view the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau again if Jalen Brunson, who fractured his hand in the playoffs, had fractured his hand during the regular season and then added on to the Anunoby and Randall and all the injuries. I think we sort of forget that Brunson actually just missed the end of the playoffs because of a broken hand. But if we had added that onto the list of injuries all through the regular season, not to say that Tom Thibodeau's minutes caused Jalen Brunson's broken hand. I'm not saying that. But if that had just added on to all the other stuff, the narrative, I think, would have been a little bit different. Anyway, Jalen Green, point guard legend, is in this list, tier 11. The ADP for him still hasn't been beaten as the worst I've ever seen. 36. What are ESPN drafters doing? Remember, ADP, average draft position. I said the other day, flippantly, incorrectly, yes, that an ADP means that of 36 means roughly half the people picked him before that and half after that, which is not true. If it's a normally distributed number, average and median would be the same, and that statement would be true. But I don't know whether the average draft position data is normally distributed. I think it is, but I don't actually know that. So I'll say roughly half of the people go before or after. For it to not be roughly half of the people there, it would have to suggest that you're getting like, let's say, 10% of the people picking Jalen Green at pick 3, and then 80% picking him at pick 80, leading to an average of 36, which just doesn't seem realistic. It seems more likely that it is going to be close to a normal distribution where average and median are about the same. Again, that's just to talk to that guy who pointed that out correctly. To me, that average does not mean that. It doesn't. But average and median are relatively interchangeable from everything that I understand about how average draft position is just catch up. In fact, I might talk to B-Dub about that because he, with FBI and all their leagues, he does keep track of all the ADP. It's not for every league. It's not for tens and thousands of leagues like Yahoo does, but we'd get sort of a shape, I guess, of the draft position stuff. Anyway, off topic. I've got Brandon Ingram in this list. And you'll say, Brandon Ingram, Dyson Daniels together? Yeah. For one reason. Brandon Ingram will score like 23 with 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. So that's great. We love those numbers. Brandon Ingram has really bad steals and blocks. His free throws were well down. He doesn't take enough threes. There's uncertainty about his role and position and being traded. There's the addition of DeJounte Murray. He stunk at the second half of last season. For a roto league, he is a higher value player. For a category league, he's not really that good. He gets hurt a ton and he gets dinged a little bit here in these tiers. That's why he is here. Now, if push comes to shove, I would take Brandon Ingram ahead of every one of these players in this tier, almost definitely. Although, even though I've just shit on Jalen Green this whole time, I would maybe take Jalen Green ahead of him. But I don't believe that Brandon Ingram needs to be way higher than this. This is part of just me saying not interested in drafting him at all. I've got DeAnthony Melton here. I've got Malik Monk in this group as well. And you can see, there's just a giant range. Ingram's ADP is 64. Not touching. If it's 80 or 90, consider it. But this is where we look at, can I get value on Dyson in the last round? Can I look at Malik Monk in the last round and maybe get value that's equivalent to Ingram without taking him in the 60s? That's how I think we should view these sort of things. The rest of tier 11, Brandon Podziemski. His ADP is at 134. Don't believe the 8 threes a game that he's going to take. Don't believe that. But take this part out of it. And I said the other day, and I'll continue to say this about Podziemski. The fact that he said that means to me that he is very confident, and they are confident that he will start and he will play 30 plus minutes. Because there is only one way that he would even get an opportunity to sniff 8 to 10 threes per game. And that's if he is the starter, ahead of Hield, ahead of Melton, and playing 33 minutes. That is the only way he could even get to that. He will not take 8 threes a game. I am very confident of that. But you've got to take the side part out of that. Marcus Smart's in this group. And then we've got a pair of Thompsons. Amen Thompson with an ADP of 107. All these players have ADP 107 on ESPN, which is fine because that's how ADPs can work. Amen Thompson and Klay Thompson. Now, Klay's Yahoo ADP is 108. I'm not doing that. I think Klay is a later round player, which Marcus Smart is. Klay's value is in the threes and in some of the scoring, but that'll be reduced from where he was last season. These are all very different players, obviously. Podziemski and Smart and Amen are probably similar. Kobe White and Klay Thompson, probably similar. But differences between them. Now, you'll also see this and go, Kobe White here is ridiculous. Kobe White's numbers on ESPN are also pretty weird. His ADP is 107. His rank is 51. So I don't know what's going on there. But White, you would not have found a bigger proponent of White than me last season. I talked about this yesterday. I'm a little worried about how it continues on or what the next step is. But I've got Podziemski, we've got Smart, we've got Amen, who, if Amen got 30 minutes, he's in his tier 5 probably. He's probably not going to get that, but he was unbelievable, and I still think he's going to be a ridiculously good player. So we've got Podziemski, Smart, Amen, and Klay Thompson. If you go into tier 12, getting towards the end of this, Malcolm Brogdon sits in this group. Keon Ellis sits in this group. Dracaris Levert, who doesn't have an ADP on Yahoo, which is wild to me. And Andy Nembhard. We know the story here. Brogdon will be better than this rank until he's hurt or traded, and then he'll be worse than this, so this is where he sits. But grabbing Brogdon late to ride it early on is totally reasonable. I don't know whether Keon Ellis will start in Sacramento. That is what I believe will happen, but it could be Herro. It could be Monk. Outside chance. Probably not likely. Ellis' ability to get steals and blocks is what brings him value, but we're talking later round stuff here. Levert, just going to be that first guard off the bench. Eventually, he will be replaced by Jalen Tyson, but that will be next season, I'm guessing. Totally okay to look at him towards the end. Also reunited with Kenny Atkinson. Also, Kenny Atkinson dropping the minutes of Mitchell and Garland means the minutes go somewhere, and some of them might go to Levert. But we know that Levert's got those percentage problems, and that's fine. And then Andrew Nembhard. Big playoffs, bad regular season, contract extension. We're not looking at playoff Nembhard. We're looking at solid option here who gets a lot of minutes. The guy I'm really worried about with the Pacers is Ben Mathurin, because they have Halliburton. They extended Nembhard. They just, for some reason, extended TJ McConnell until his age 36 season, which, what are you guys doing? But to me, where the hell does Mathurin fit? I know he's under contract, but where does he play? How does he get any minutes? Because Ben Shepherd's there too. That will be one to watch. Some other tier 12 players, Shaden Sharp, who probably has the highest upside there, but injuries killed him last season. The team is still really weird, and his efficiency can be a problem as well as lack of defensive stats. I've got Max Strus, Gary Trent, and Vince Williams. I think Strus and Vince Williams are pretty analogous. Not going to blow us away, but contribute in some different areas. If Strus has a season where he shoots well again, which, despite the look of him, despite his demelanated look, he's not that good of a shooter in terms of overall percentage. He's had like one great 3-point percentage. I'm not saying he's not a good shooter because he takes difficult shots and it helps open up the offense, and that's all that nuanced talk. But in terms of just raw 3-point shooting percentage, not good. And that's what translates into fantasy production for us because it means he hits more threes. And he hasn't. But if he does have a good season of doing that, well, his value will probably rise. Vince Williams does a bit of everything as well. I hope that they find 30 minutes a night for Vince. Like, I would think that at some point they'll be like, ooh, we can't really roll with Zach Edey in a big minute role. Jaren's got to push to center, meaning Vince plays the 4. And I think that will work out better for them. Gary Trent, we know that. If your league counts long twos, well, he's going to be one of the top players. But if he takes more threes in Milwaukee, then that'll help. And then maybe the steals, they've been volatile. We know this. And then Shaedon Sharpe is the other one that we just talked about there. And just to round things off in tier 13, not that big of a difference between 12 and 13, to be honest. Grayson Allen, who is likely to drop significantly from where he was last season. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope will start. Maybe gets more usage than he had in Denver, but that doesn't mean that much. Bud Hield, who I don't think will start. Jaden Ivey, who I also don't think will start, but could. But worries us with the lack of defense, lack of assists, lack of field goal percentage, bad free throws. Not a good combo. But there is upside here. He's still in year 3. Caleb Martin, probably a starter in Philadelphia. I guess if they're looking for a little bit more size, they might push Gershon Yabusele in there, the Suplex legend. Welcome to Suplex City, Gershon. I don't think they'll immediately start with Yabusele there, but Martin's a player who I think is relatively limited upside. And then Kelly Oubre, he's Philadelphia teammate who had some big games last season, but much like when we talked about with Tyrese Maxey, Paul George is there. Theoretically, we get more out of Joel Embiid this season, and Oubre was a bench player for last season until injuries hit, and he did get by on some really high steal numbers. I don't fully trust that. He's a horrible rebound assist player who has iffy percentages often. I just don't like him as a fantasy player, but he is in this group. And that is shooting guard tiers. Sorry we went a little bit off track on some of that part of the show. I'm sure some of you don't mind. Hit the thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. And small forwards will be coming hopefully today. Hopefully we get that out today. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.